In July 2024, an abomination was unleashed on the islands of Isla Nublar and Isla Sorna, a creature unlike anything the world had ever seen before. Goji Center's Indominus 2. Intelligent, powerful, and capable of self-replication, it tore through the islands, leaving destruction in its wake. But its rampage wasn't even the worst of it. The creature's diverse genome made it the perfect host for diseases from various phylums to mutate, evolve, and spread. Soon the cocktails of diseases it harbored began to spread rapidly, infecting every species on the island it came into contact with. The situation was dire. Not only did the Indominus 2 need to be eradicated, but the diseases it carried had to be wiped out before it could spread off the islands. Bombing the islands was the first suggestion. However, there was no guarantee that the pathogens the Indom created wouldn't just be blown high into the atmosphere and carried to the mainland. So, a different option was offered: the creation of a hybrid to eradicate the Indom and all infected organisms on the island. And so, Apollyon was born. It was designed to be an efficient predator, fast, small, and deadly, reproducing and consuming all of the island's resources. And then, after everything was gone, it was meant to starve and die. But as often happens, life found a way. Before we can understand the scale of the disaster, we need to take a step back and look at what Apollyon actually is. I'll be giving a quick overview here, but if you want the full deep dive into how this creature was built from the ground up to counter the Indominus 2, check out this video here. That video explores the creature's design inspirations, genetic makeup, and its original purpose in the war for Isla Nublar. Apollyon is not a natural life form, it's a bioengineered executioner. Its body is based on Meganera, a hawk-sized prehistoric dragonfly with unmatched aerial agility and reflexes. This gave it extreme precision and maneuverability, allowing it to hunt even the fastest targets mid-flight. To make it lethal enough to pierce the Indominus' defenses, Apollyon was outfitted with a venomous harpoon derived from the geographer cone snail, a biological weapon that fires like a dart, capable of delivering neurotoxins at range. Building on that foundation, its venom cocktail was further enhanced with the incredibly potent toxins of the inland taipan, one of the most venomous snakes on Earth. To ensure the harpoons could pierce the Indominus' thick hide, the harpoon structure was reinforced with goethite, a contribution from the limpet. But a single Apollyon wouldn't be enough. The Indominus threat had multiplied, an army of self-replicating predators spreading across the island. To counter them, Apollyon would not only need numbers, but would need to work together seamlessly, and so fire ant DNA was added, giving rise to eusocial behavior with coordinated cast of workers, soldiers, and queens. One adult could bring down a giant, but a swarm was extinction incarnate. These creatures weren't merely weapons, they were a biological purge, designed to wipe the slate clean and then vanish once the ecosystem was restored. But, as history shows, when mankind attempts to control nature, the outcome rarely goes according to plan. Following the release of the two Apollyon colonies on Isla Nublar and Isla Sorna, everything appeared to be going according to plan. Over the course of 2 months, the colonies rapidly expanded, exterminating all life on the islands, hybrids, dinosaurs, and normal animals alike. The colonies should have then collapsed on themselves. However, something unexpected happened. In September 2024, both colonies underwent a nuptial flight. For those of you who don't know, a nuptial flight is a reproductive event in which winged male and female ants, known as elates, leave their parent colony to mate and establish new colonies. This behavior is prominent in fire ants, whose DNA, as mentioned, was integrated into the Apollyon genome. Fire ant nuptial flights typically occur between May and November, triggered by specific environmental cues like warm temperatures, high humidity, and weather. During these synchronized flights, swarms of elates take to the skies, where mating occurs mid-air. The males die shortly afterward, while the fertilized queens descend, shed their wings, and begin searching for suitable locations to establish new colonies, meaning there were now hundreds of virgin Apollyon queens and males searching for a place to make new colonies. Now typically, fire ant queens only travel a mile or so to create their new nest, or in rare cases up to 10 miles. So in theory, this would mean these new queens wouldn't be able to make it off the islands to reproduce. However, one key detail about Apollon's genome drastically changes this. Some species of dragonflies are known to migrate hundreds or even thousands of miles to breed, and it would seem the included Meganera DNA has contributed this trait, meaning when these Apollyon elates took off in search of a new home, they had the potential to cross entire oceans and travel to nearly anywhere around the globe. However, luckily for us, Apollyon was new to this world. They didn't quite understand just how far they could spread yet, and so, calling upon their instincts, they sensed the nearest land and headed there. Over the next several days, hundreds of strange silhouettes began to dot the skies of Central and South America. At first, there was just the occasional sighting as the Apollyon queens took to swamps, wetlands, and riparian forests to start their colonies. But once November hit, that's when all hell broke loose. The first batches of Apollyon had finished being raised and took flight, ready to serve and protect their queen. Potentially hundreds of colonies were now spread throughout Central and South America, with thousands of soldiers traveling far and wide in search of food to fuel the growing colonies. In the early weeks following Apollyon's mainland emergence, the world remained unaware of the magnitude of the threat. At first, scattered reports came in from remote river basins and swamplands, stories of livestock found torn apart, chunks of meat missing, entire wetland ecosystems eerily silent, and fishermen disappearing without a trace. Many brushed it off as rumor or local superstition, but by the time authorities began to connect the dots, the Apollyon colonies had already embedded themselves deeply into the ecological arteries of Central and South America. Apollyons thrived in environments rich in water, riparian forests, swamps, wetlands, and river deltas, due to their unique life cycle. Their nymphs, much like those of dragonflies, were aquatic and fiercely predatory, dominating streams and ponds where they laid. Fish populations plummeted in mere weeks. Amphibians vanished. Local food chains buckled under the sudden pressure of these hyper-efficient predators. The insects didn't just displace native predators, they replaced entire trophic levels. And then came the adult forms. Hypermobile, venomous, and coordinated, Apollyon adults did not behave like any other apex predator of their size. Their fire ant-derived eusociality gave them terrifying cohesion and aggression. Scout drones would locate prey, whether animal or human, and return with information. Then would come the soldiers, armed with goethite-hardened harpoons that could pierce bone and armor alike. Victims paralyzed by typin-grade neurotoxin and laced with the precision-targeted conotoxins of the cone snail rarely lived to tell the tale. Almost anything subjected to the venom died in under an hour, if not in mere minutes. Apollyon's venom was so complex and rapidly acting that no known antivenom or antibiotic had proven effective. Attempts to synthesize a counteragent have failed, as the venom's diverse and complex peptide chains, derived from both cone snail and inland typing components, resist all categorization and neutralization. In effect, Apollyon venom has rendered modern medicine helpless. The toll on local communities was immediate. In rural villages, people began abandoning homes near rivers and lakes. School children were kept indoors, fishermen refused to go out, and entire towns evacuated the affected regions. Emergency rooms flooded with victims suffering from neurotoxic paralysis that almost always resulted in death. Riddled with wounds consistent with impalement, yet no bullets, no knives, just strange needle-like punctures. Paranoia grew. Entire areas of land were deemed uninhabitable as the sounds of jungle life gave way to unnatural silence and the eerie whirring buzz of wing beats. Economically, the effects were devastating. Agriculture and civilization along major river systems like the Amazon collapsed in many regions. Irrigation canals became breeding grounds for nymphs. Shipping along inland waterways halted. Hydropower infrastructure was compromised by nesting colonies that used dam outflows and intakes as protected breeding areas. Fishing industries were decimated. But perhaps the most concerning element of the invasion was how quickly Apollyon colonies began spreading into urban centers. All it took was something as simple as a pond in a city park. Their ability to adapt, thanks to their diverse hybrid genome, made them equally comfortable in concrete jungles as in the real ones. In cities across Costa Rica, Peru, and Brazil, colonies erupted in residential areas seemingly overnight. And unlike most invasive species, Apollyons were not content to simply exist within their niche. They expanded aggressively. They were not merely surviving, they were conquering. By January, the situation was being compared without exaggeration to an apocalyptic event. Entire ecosystems had collapsed. Agriculture and production of many goods had been halted, and public health systems were overwhelmed. Civil unrest broke out as governments failed to respond effectively. Regions were quarantined, roads barricaded, and aerial surveillance tracked the ominous movement of winged silhouettes drifting between regions, always heading towards new sources of water, new territory, new conquest. Apollyons thrive in environments rich in water. Their nymphs, aquatic in nature, were some of the most effective predators to ever invade such ecosystems. In a matter of weeks, freshwater fish populations began to dwindle. Amphibians, critical indicators of environmental health, disappeared altogether. The usual hum of life along streams and ponds turned into an unnatural silence as the Apollyons disrupted entire trophic structures. The aggressive predation continued as Apollyon adults, now fully emerged and mobile, spread across the landscape. Their coordinated eusocial behavior, aggression, and unparalleled weaponry made them formidable predators to even the largest prey. Species that had once been keystone predators were swiftly replaced by Apollyons at the top of the food chain. As Apollyon colonies began to spread throughout tropical forests and wetlands, they began to alter the very structure of these ecosystems. Their relentless consumption of resources led to a steep decline in biodiversity. Herbivores that once regulated plant populations were wiped out, causing a surge in the growth of invasive and fast-growing plant species, which choked out other vegetation and led to a significant decrease in overall plant diversity. The presence of Apollyon colonies also had profound effects on the soil composition in these regions, as Apollyons consumed entire populations of small mammals, amphibians, and reptiles. The decomposition process began to change. Normally, the organic material left by decaying creatures would return nutrients to the soil and water, supporting new plant growth. However, with so much of the decomposition process being rushed by Apollyons, nutrient cycling became erratic, leading to imbalances in soil health. Unlike typical predators, Apollyons did not fit into any existing ecological niche. They annihilated all of them. Where other predators consumed a small portion of the food chain, Apollyons wiped it out entirely. Their ever-expanding colony ensured that their numbers never dwindled for long, and their territorial expansion was swift and unrelenting. By April 2025, the situation had reached a breaking point. The first Apollyon nuptial flight, which took place in late 2024, had already devastated ecosystems across Central America. And now, if scientists' predictions were correct, a grim reality loomed. The next flight was imminent. Fire ants conduct nuptial flights from May to November. If Apollyon followed the same seasonal pattern as early behavior suggested, it meant time was quickly running out before a second wave began. But this one would be far worse. There were no longer just two colonies. Since the release, Apollyon had multiplied rapidly, establishing dozens, perhaps hundreds of nests across the region. Each one would soon release hundreds of winged queens, setting the stage for a global-scale invasion. With swarms poised to erupt across the globe, containment wasn't just urgent, it was essential for survival. But stopping Apollyon was easier said than done. Apollon's unique biology rendered most solutions useless. The government's armed forces had already been doing their best to stop the invasion, and while guns and incendiaries were effective at killing a single Apollyon if you could manage to hit them, the Apollons were far too fast and numerous to effectively fight. Their ranged harpoons could easily pierce most body armor, and it only took one shot to eliminate a soldier from the fight. So, humanity's best minds started looking for solutions. The first suggestion considered was to create a disease that would spread and eliminate the colonies. Unfortunately, Apollons were specifically designed to eliminate diseases. Their bodies produce antimicrobial peptides courtesy of the fire ant, granting it extreme resistance to disease. Even synthetic viruses and engineered bacteria struggled to take hold. The only plausible countermeasure would be a genetic disease, but for it to work, we need to infect the queens themselves. And with so many colonies spread across remote jungles and swamps, and guarded by thousands of soldiers, reaching them is virtually impossible. Next came the classic recommendation. Let's do what humanity does best, blow them up. And while yes, a powerful bomb dropped on a colony's nesting grounds would certainly do the trick, in reality this wouldn't be a sustainable solution. Apollyon colonies are widespread and mobile. While one jungle is burning, hundreds of Apollons are spread across thousands of miles of jungle. A scorched earth approach might work, and even then that is a pretty big might, but at what cost? In order to wipe out all of the Apollyon colonies, entire rainforests, cities, and countries would need to be incinerated, requiring us to somehow relocate hundreds of millions of people. In addition, such large destruction would surely require the use of nuclear bombs, which at such a large scale would not only annihilate some of the most biologically diverse ecosystems in the world, but could potentially trigger global famine through a nuclear winter, contaminate oceans and air with radioactive fallout, and collapse economies and governments worldwide. So while it could end the Apollyon threat, the cost would not be worth the reward. Time is slipping away. The next nuptial flight is expected as early as June, and if Apollons manage to establish themselves across multiple continents, it will become impossible to eliminate them. This isn't a local infestation anymore, it's the first wave of a planet-wide invasion. Every option we've explored so far has failed or posed unacceptable risk. Diseases are neutralized and impractical, bombs destroy more than they save, and any sort of containment is a fantasy. Only one idea remains: a dangerous gamble. To stop an engineered apex predator, we may need to engineer something even more precise. Not another monster, not a bomb, a scalpel. Create a new hybrid, designed solely to infiltrate, hunt, and eliminate Apollyon. It must be specialized and efficient, but more importantly, it needs something Apollyon lacked: limits. This hybrid must not become the next Apollyon. Its life cycle must be tethered to its mission, the destruction of Apollyon colonies. And when those colonies are gone, the hybrid must die with them. And so, a top secret, deeply controversial plan was set into motion: the creation of humanity's last hope. And so the question remains: will this hybrid succeed in its mission, or will it be the final nail in humanity's coffin? In a future video, we will unveil the hybrid engineered to save humanity from the wrath of Apollyon. Can this new creation succeed, or will we only dig our grave deeper? Stay tuned to find out. If you want to support the channel, Creature Archives now has memberships. Gain access to custom emojis, including one of Apollyon in action, early access to videos, and more behind-the-scenes content. Make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on so you don't miss what happens next. Until next time, stay curious, and I'll see you all in the next video.